Well, hi everyone. So basically this week's post is just about us sharing some of our time-saving Photoshop tricks that we've learned over the years. As Morgan said, when you're a designer in a studio, it's unfortunately not enough to just be a really good designer. You also have to be able to make great designs at a pace that means you can have a substantial collection of work to show all of your different customers. There's lots of variety and you've got lots of things for people to choose from.
Fashion itself, it's always ever changing. Trends are always changing. So you sort of have to mirror that pace as a designer, otherwise you get left behind, unfortunately. So, fashion's always evolving and you as a designer need to be the same. So you need to be able to be ready and able to design within a short time frame to any brief that comes at you. And I feel like those time-saving shortcuts are the only way to get through, not only way to meet deadlines.
That will really help you, especially if you're a new designer. Things that we ourselves learned when we first started working. Yeah, so that's what this week's post is about.
I think designing at your own pace would be ideal.
Yeah.
If you're, starting off, you definitely have to work to your own pace to learn things. But
yeah, true.
You've got to make sure that the time you're putting in is worth the outcome as well, both financially and to suit your expertise, your level of expertise. So, if you're spending hours upon hours on one design that you've charged X amount of dollars and you've, gone over completely, then you're totally out of balance.
Yeah.
Which, can't happen in the industry. But yeah, I guess time and experience will always help with this. I think knowledge is power, so the more you ask, the further ahead you're going to get.
That's so hard. I've learned so many tricks, especially since working here. But I think something that's really revolutionized my pace has been really committing to using shortcuts. And I know that sounds really basic, but prior to that, I would use some shortcuts here and there, but I've really learned to use all of the tools that I'm using all the time in shortcut form. And it's just cut my design time in half, massively. And especially when you've spent a lot of time doing things the long way, it's just a bit of a breath of fresh air to do something at your fingertips. So some of my favorites would be Command T for transform, always using that. And also just using Shift and then the plus and minus to go through your filters instead of just manually selecting each one, which is so tedious. That has that was my when I learned that, I was excuse me, what have I been doing all of these years? So really simple but effective.
Okay, so Lindsay has two tips.
Sorry.
Here we go. Steph, what about you?
Yeah, shortcuts are an absolute must. You can't be looking down when you're designing. You really need to be focused on what you're doing on the screen. And the time in between, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're doing 3 designs a day, you really need to be putting that time into what's going on up here and not what's going on down there. I think what's also really important is knowing the power of each of the tools that you're using. There's usually 5 different ways to use one tool, and taking the time to really figure out what each tool is capable of. I think that's game changer. One of my favorite tools, now back to the question, is filter noise medium. That is absolute game changer for me. You can use it to smooth out your key lines in your line drawings and florals, things like that. It makes it look a bit more natural and less pixelated. Yeah. And also using the same tool to smooth out chain seams, so you can get rid of sort of rough brush strokes and things like that, so it's ready for print, ready for production. Yeah.
And I have to say, just to add to that as well, when we were creating the Photoshop course, those are the tips and tricks that when I first started working here, every day I was learning something new from the other designers, being what? I didn't know how to do that. And those are things that just talking about pace, they've really, really just made my designing so much faster and so much slicker, and really helped me become a much more productive designer. And those are the types of things that we're sharing on those courses. So they're really, really valuable. And we use them in-house as well to train new designers when they arrive. So yeah, just a really amazing resource if you're at all interested in becoming taking that next step from designing in your own time to trying to do this in a more professional capacity. Yeah. And the more time that you spend designing as well, you just naturally learn these things like as you're doing it. And your pace just does become quicker. So it's just about practice, really. Like just putting in the hours of practice. Like that's really your best tool to just be dedicated.